Okay, so hi everyone. Thank you for taking time out of your day, well, out of your evening right now to join us. Mona and I are going to talk about values, especially living by your values when things get hard. So obviously this is going to be very relatable, I hope, for the current circumstances of the world in terms of COVID-19, the coronavirus, but also this is something that can be very applicable to anytime things get tough. So we hope that you can look back on this webinar, which we posted later online on our Facebook page and on our YouTube channel, and you can reference it for just any tough time in life. Okay, so if you don't know who I am, my name is Alessia Caputo. I have a Bachelor of Arts in Psychology, and I'm in my final few months, hopefully last 2 months, of my master's degree in psychology, which is why it says candidate. And I have a bit of a background working in mental health and addictions with adolescents and adults.
And my name is Mona Atrzadeh. I graduated from York with a Bachelor of Science in Psychology, and I'm also in the final year of my Master's of Psychology at Atrzadeh Graduate Professional School. We're currently both doing our practicum at SILM Center for Mental Health, and Alessia and I have both kind of bonded over the fact that we have a really keen interest in acceptance and commitment therapy, which is also known as ACT. And our webinar actually today is based a lot on the modality of ACT. And what ACT is, it basically focuses on accepting the things that we cannot change or control and committing to actions that help improve our lives. So in other words, being the person that you want to be even through tough times, which is obviously very applicable right now with everything going on and in general. So we hope that this will be of benefit to you all.
Awesome. We're going to cover what values are and how they're different from goals. We want to give you some ways to introduce, to identify what your actual values are. And most importantly, we want to provide everyone with some take-home strategies to apply for themselves. So how do you actually live out your values once you identify them? We don't want it to feel like just this big ominous thing like, oh, we talked about values and now how do we kind of implement that into our lives? We want some clarity around that. And so you can ask questions throughout the presentation in the chat, and our supervisor, Dr. Theslam, will get those to us at the end. So feel free to ask. Okay, so values are how you want to behave. They're here and now in the present moment. So they're how you're acting, how you're treating yourself, how you want to treat other people, and how you want to treat the world around you. Values are usually 1 to 2 words, so they don't have to be this big thing. It's, you know, kindness or being kind, adventure or being adventurous, curious or being curious, curiosity. And they're not the same as goals. They're often confused with goals, but values are a way to live along the way of achieving your goals. And Mona will talk more about that.
So now we're going to actually talk about what are goals. So what you want to get in life, the kind of some tangible things that you are hoping to achieve or obtain. And a lot of the times it could be in the present, but it also can be in the near or in the distant future. Additionally, goals are things that you're aiming to complete. For example, Alessia right now we're aiming to complete our Master's of Psychology. So that's a goal that we have, but goals are also endless in itself.
Okay. And in looking at how do you actually identify a value, when you start to brainstorm what a value would be for you, there's 6 really important key components. So like I said before, values are here and now. So how do I want to be right now, today, with my loved ones, with myself? How do I want to treat the world around me? And how do I want to be? We have a choice in every single moment about if we're going to act on our values or not. And that's one thing I really love about the ACT modality and ACT therapy is that it really highlights that there is some choice. Even when things are really tough, we do have autonomy to work within that, right? Even within limitations. Values are freely chosen, so they're about me and not what others want for me. So my values are important to me. They're my personal values, and they're not about what other people want me to be and how they want me to be. Values are never completed. So like Mona was saying, a goal can be completed, but values are more about how you are acting on the way to achieving your goal. Yeah, they are also intrinsically rewarding, which means that they make you feel good naturally. They come from within. They give us that sense of meaning and purpose. A lot of people find that they have values related to their professions, and you'll see people saying, oh, I have a value of generosity. This is really linked to my work. And you see people who are really happy and find a purpose in their work. Values are dynamic, so they're always changing. They can be different in different parts of your lives, and we'll talk more about that in a bit. And finally, values never have to be justified. So you might need to justify goals, but not values. And a nice example that ACT uses is if, let's say, generosity to others is a goal for you, and you want to volunteer at a shelter or you want to do something in the community to give back, you don't have to justify that as a value. But if you wanted to move your entire family somewhere to do that and to act that value out, then maybe that would be requiring some justification. And that's because it's more of a goal. Okay, thank you. Values do a couple things for us. So they inspire us. They inspire us to show us how we want to act to others, to ourselves, and within the world around us. They motivate us to do the hard work necessary to make that continuous choice that, okay, I'm actually going to act on my values right now. I'm making this conscious decision in this moment to do this. And it is hard work. And they also fill us. So they bring a sense of fulfillment, enrich our experience with a sense of meaning and purpose. And so as you're thinking about this, keep in mind they're 1 or 2 words. So don't get overwhelmed by that. Okay, and lastly, there's no right or wrong value. ACT also uses a really good analogy for this. So it's like your own personal preference or taste, like pizza. So some people like vegetarian pizza, some people like meat lovers, some people like Hawaiian. And it's not that one is better than the other. It's just about what is your own personal preference or taste. So your values are based on and picked on how you want your life to be. Again, there's like the autonomy and the choice there. And they can really help you highlight what you can or cannot control.
So now we're going to do a little activity. And if you'd like to type in the chat whether you think the following actions are goals or values, please be sure to. It's entirely up to you. So the first one would be caring for your body. Would you think that's a value or a goal?
And you can type this in the chat. Oh, actually, I don't know if it'll show up for us.
It may not show up for us, but you can compare amongst yourselves after. And then running a marathon, would you say that's a value or a goal? Getting a promotion, when it's being helpful, friendly, and responsible, would we identify that as a value or a goal? Being supportive and caring for your family, and buying a house. So those are the answers. You guys did great. I can't see your answers, but even trying, it's a great job. Thank you so much. As you can see, caring for your body, we would identify that as a value. And we would also identify being helpful, friendly, and responsible, and being supportive and caring for your family, all as values. Whereas running a marathon, getting a promotion, and buying a house would be considered goals. Some important things to note are, for example, being helpful, friendly, and responsible. You can still do those things in your current job. You don't need to have achieved a promotion, or even you could be unemployed and still do those things and still live within your values. And even being supportive and caring for your family, you don't need to actually own a home to do that for your family. So it's really important to know that you can still attain values and still live by your values, even if you haven't met your goals. And kind of just to do an overview right now of what values, goals, and actions are, and how they're all interconnected actually, is that values are the way you want to live your life and the behaviors that you want to promote. So how do you want to live your life and those behaviors that you want to share with the world? Your goals, what you want to achieve, get, or attain in the future. And the third element, which is also very important, is the action. So what do you do and say in order to obtain your goals and live your life according to your values? And as we can see, these are all interconnected. Although they're somewhat distinct, they really do overlap and they all work together.
So a nice way that ACT therapy actually has the values broken down is in 4 different domains. So these may or may not be applicable to you, but they're just 4 very general ways to start to sort and think about your values. So the first one is work or education. And for some people that would be separate if you have work and education and you find different values in that. The second is relationships, then leisure or play. And finally, personal growth or health or mental health, physical health, all types of health. And this is called the bullseye in ACT therapy, and it's a really nice visual representation of how closely or inconsistently or far away that you are living to your values. So As you can see, the closer to the center of the bullseye, that would be the closer you feel that you are fully living towards or by your values. And the further away, the more inconsistently you are acting with your values. So if I have a value of patience and kindness right now, that might be a little bit tested given the current situation that we're all in, like lots of people at home, different conflicts that are coming up, just by feeling more isolated and not being able to go outside. This could be showing us, by looking at it visually, circumstances could be moving us actually away. So usually I might be on the closer part of the bullseye, let's say, on relationships, but maybe I'm further away. I have a little bit less patience, let's say. And so it's a nice visual representation to see, okay, where am I at visually? And is it time for me to look at ways that I could, within my control, move a little bit closer to being more value congruent? So acting in ways that are congruent and consistent with the values I have. And also, if we're not acting within a value consistently, this might also help us revisit whether this is actually a value for us or not, or whether it's something that maybe we think should be a value for us, or something that we feel pressured to kind of fit into. So it's just a nice visual way to look at it all.
So this might look a little intimidating, but I promise you we're going to kind of explain why we wanted to show you this vast amount of possible values that you may align with. As Alessia said, there's the 4 domains that are identified in the previous slides, but what's great about this slide is that it shows you that there's a vast number of values that you can really see wanting to live your life by. So for example, acceptance, there's connection there, self-care, independence, and even the very last one isn't actually a value. It actually asks you to insert your own unlisted value here. So if there's a value that doesn't belong to one of these, you can yourself actually list what yours is, and it helps give you an actual word to what a value you have, maybe haven't had the opportunity to name or title, and this will give you that opportunity to kind of find a term that may be applicable to you. And now we're going to show you some ways that you're able to actually really clarify and identify your value. So what are some ways that you can put a name to that value and identify it? So right now, we want you to imagine that we're 10 years into the future and you're reflecting on your past. So we want you to finish these 3 sentences. So the first sentence would be, I spent too much time worrying about ... So you would finish that. What are you spending a lot of the time worrying about in that moment? So it could be the unknown. I know that's something that a lot of people right now are struggling with. Finances, your kids, your parents, your health, finances. I know, sorry, I just said that one, but I know that's a big one. Your health and even your relationships is also very something that a lot of people worry about. The next thing is, I did not spend enough time doing things like, so maybe engaging in your hobbies, self-care, time for yourself, or even being present. So identifying these things will then help you with the third thing. What I do differently from today onwards is, so what would you do differently, reflecting on these past 10 years, looking back, what would you have done differently? And that could maybe even be carving out more time for yourself in the day for just you, and maybe connecting and being present. So it kind of helps put things into perspective a little bit. Sorry, Alessia. I'm not sure if Alessia got kicked out. Sorry, are you able to see if...
I'm pretty sure she's not here right now. So if you want to keep going, and then she can hopefully just jump in.
Okay, no problem. So, sorry. So another thing that you could do would be to pick a problem that you're currently struggling with right now and take a moment to connect with the hardship of this problem or challenge. So kind of identifying the feelings and the difficulties that may be associated with that is also really important. Okay, let's say just at that part, if you want to go on from this part.
Sorry, guys. Okay, so Mona's already asked you to kind of check in with a difficult thing or a difficult time that you've had. So 1 year from now, looking back at responding to this difficulty, considering the following as you dealt with this problem that you've already connected to. So you've thought about what are the feelings associated with this problem, and what are the difficulties that come with it. So how is your life impacted by this? So those are the first two things to think of. And then the first question to ask yourself in terms of this is, what did you stand for in the face of this? So how did you act as a brother, a mother, a father, as a partner in a relationship? How did you act and what did you stand for? Secondly, how did you treat yourself as you went through this? So if you're going through a really difficult time right now, did you treat yourself with compassion? Did you treat yourself with empathy? Did you have forgiveness if you couldn't get all the things you wanted to get accomplished in one day? Did you treat yourself in a more destructive way or without compassion? And then finally, how did you treat others as you went through this? So if you have a value of patience and kindness, were you actually acting on that value? Or was it really hard for you to do? So just thinking about this and how you actually want the ideal outcome to be will help you identify what is the actual value that I have for myself.
So once you've identified that value that you align with, there are a lot of possible goals that kind of go hand in hand with them. So what Alessia and I identified as a value that we have is patience and being patient. And the first thing you want to do is to go about living these values is to identify some possible goals that would help you achieve that. So increasing empathy, that's one thing that you could do to help attain being patient. Practicing active listening skills. A lot of us are home right now with our family members, and although we're all home together, are we really being active and paying attention to what's being said to us with everything going on? Taking on what we can handle. I know myself, I always take on too much, and I'm trying to be better with that, but that can sometimes impact how much patience someone has. So by kind of letting go of too much control, that can also help as well. Practicing self-compassion. Passion is really, really important because a lot of the times we may be compassionate for other individuals, but we're not for ourselves. So taking that time and checking in with ourselves and being self-compassionate can really help aid in being more patient. And another one that we found was taking pause when needed. Sometimes just stopping and just taking time for yourself is really all you need in establishing being patient. So these are also just possible goals that Alessia and I identified. There could be a number of other goals that you may identify for yourself. There's no right or wrong, and that's something that you can do as well. Another thing that we kind of thought about that goes along the ACT model is that sometimes when these goals are too big, they can sometimes seem overwhelming, especially when things are tough and hard. So it sometimes isn't really the most realistic solution. So what we found was if you can break those goals down into smaller goals, it can make it a lot easier to attain what you're trying to attain. So for example, taking the goal of taking on what we can handle, if you break that down into smaller goals, such as setting aside specific time for connecting or for yourself, saying no when you want to and saying yes when you want to. So making sure that you're kind of doing what you want and when you want can also help you attain that goal. Being transparent with others and knowing your limits, and additionally asking for help. A lot of the times sometimes we don't want to ask for help, and it's okay to ask for help. So it's finding these small goals that we can achieve that will help us attain those larger goals long term. And finally, sometimes we don't always achieve the goals that we set out for ourselves, and that's okay. But maybe taking some time and some moments just to identify the following can actually help us be more successful in the future with our goals. So identifying things such as, is that goal still important for you, is one thing that you can do. Finding ways to increase your chances of attaining that goal in the future. Additionally, attaining skills before attempting to achieve that desired goal. Sometimes you actually need some skills before you're able to achieve or obtain what you're setting out to. And finally, identifying any possible resources or help you may need. So reaching out to a friend or even looking online and seeing what you may need to attain that goal is something that's available to you.
Awesome, thanks, Mona. And then these are some ways that you can actually think about implementing your values into your day. So these are all, again, ACT therapy models that they have involved in ACT therapy. So the first is flavoring and savoring. So thinking about 2 to 3 values maybe in the morning and saying which are the ones that I want to include into my day, and then actively in the moment when you want to start acting out that value. So let's say kindness. doing something that you would think is kind. So whether that's doing a favor for someone, even relevant right now is like cleaning the bathroom for someone, or cleaning the house, or cooking a meal for someone, whatever you would think is aligned with that value. Actively knowing that you're doing it and taking the time to check in with it, and then savoring it. So recognizing and sitting with, okay, how does this actually feel when I do this value? How does it feel for me? Does it feel good? Because values are supposed to be intrinsically rewarding, so they're supposed to feel good. And that just really helps you connect with, okay, this is really a value for me, and I feel really good when I do it. The second thing is having a values mantra. It's not like a traditional mantra in the sense when we think of saying something to yourself, but it would be you can do this 2 different times of day. So in the morning or the evening. The first one in the morning is waking up and again picking 2 to 3 different values and thinking of ways of, okay, how do I want to act congruently or consistently with these values today? And at the end of the day, you can also have a check-in where you just take a couple minutes and say, did I act in ways that fit my values? What ways did I do this? Did I not do this? And it might seem like a lot of work, but even if you do this for 5 minutes a day, it's more than nothing. And it's really helpful to actually connect with that value and recognize, okay, this is one that actually really fits for me. Because I think a lot of the time we struggle to think if a value is something that we actually want or that others are putting on to us. And this is a nice way to have that reference point of, okay, this is actually something I want for myself. And lastly, setting a choice point. So I like to do this around 2 or 3 p.m. When my day is about, let's say, halfway through, and just setting an alarm on my phone and saying, okay, it's my values, implementing values alarm, and checking in with myself to see, have I acted in ways that are congruent with my values this morning? And it's a really nice way to check in with myself. If I'm having a really rough morning, do I want to continue acting in ways that maybe don't fit my values? And that's why they call it a choice point, because there's a lot of autonomy in it. And you can tell yourself at that moment, okay, how am I going to act moving forwards, whether it's within your control or not.
So going along with what Alessia just said, it's really important to check in and re-identify your values. A lot of the times when you do that, it helps us reestablish them. So by saying the following, I here now in this moment notice what is important and meaningful to me. Just by saying that out loud or even writing down your values can really help in you aligning yourselves with them. And additionally, it also helps us better motivate ourselves to live those values and helps us move towards them.
These are some resources if you find that you are actually struggling with identifying those couple values for yourself, because it is quite hard and overwhelming when you first think and you see that list of 60 plus, and you think, oh my gosh, what are my values going to be? So the first one here, the values ranking quiz, it gives you another big list actually of different types of values that you could pick through. They ask you to, I think, pick at least 10, and then this one's more about ranking in terms of 1 to 10 or 1 to however many you choose. So if you want to rank them, you can do that as well. Like, which is the most important? Is it fun? Is it authenticity, humor? But also, again, just gives you a nice big list to pick from. And the second link, the values profile there on Psychology Today, it's free. I know it says $6.95, but you do not need to buy that report. It asks you to take a test, and it asks you a couple situational based questions. And at the end, it identifies a couple values for you. I think it sends you a link via email. So this is another nice way to get a bit of a sense of, okay, what are the values that I think fit best for me? And then the last one is actually just, there we go, is the book, The Happiness Trap, Stop Struggling, Start Living by Russ Harris, who is an ACT therapy trainer and an ACT therapist. And it goes, of course, obviously into a lot of the ACT therapy model, but in ways that you can actually apply it to yourself. So there's a lot of tangible things and work that you can take from that.
And just some concluding remarks that we have is, a lot of the times when things are tough and hard, it's really hard to really live by our values because we don't always have the control that we would like to or are able to stop what's going on. So by replacing thoughts like, when is it going to end? When is this going to stop? And kind of directing it to values such as maybe curiosity, adventure, self-care, kind of values that will take you out of that mindset can help with kind of the emotions that are coming up for you. Not to say that that's not okay. A lot of the times emotions such as frustration, anger, sadness, they can come up, and that's of course okay. And even to even sit with them a little bit, that's fine as well. But by trying to focus on your values, it can help redirect that and to make the process a little bit easier, and kind of gives you a bit more control over what's going on, and to live the situation to the best of your abilities.
It actually helps you
So
enjoy
we'd
the
like
journey.
to thank you for tuning in. Yeah, exactly. It helps you enjoy the journey a lot more. And we hope that this kind of has given you some of the tools to help you with what's going on right now and in general, in life in general. So Alessia and I want to thank you so much for joining. And if you have any questions, please let us know.
Hi, everyone. So this is your opportunity to ask some questions. That was a lot of information, and so you can also take a few seconds or minutes, as long as you need, to really let this digest. And Alessia and Mona, thank you so much for taking the time to walk us through it all. One thing that I'm specifically wondering about while we wait for some more questions to show up is, how do I figure out whether a value is actually a value of mine, and how do I not get lost in that giant list of potential values?
Oh, gee.
It's up to you. You can go if you want. It's up to you.
Okay. So sorry, Dr. Thessalem, you're saying, how do you not get lost in the list of all the giant values and figuring out which ones actually are for you?
Yeah, I mean, I think when people can look through a list like that, they can maybe get lost in it, and also maybe think that all of them are values for themselves. So what's a good way for people to actually figure out which values are theirs?
I think Mona actually did a good job covering a little bit about in terms of the goals. So if you find that you're not really, say you have a lot of values, or you're thinking that a lot of them actually fit for you, and you start to set goals that you don't find you're meeting, and you're getting really frustrated with, okay, why am I not meeting this goal? I think that could be a little bit of a way to look at, okay, maybe this could be a value, but not one of my main priority values as well. Because I think a lot of those could be values for us, right? Like authenticity, humor, but it might not be at the forefront. And because values are so dynamic, I think if you break them down in those 4 domains, it really helps too. And even just observing your behavior for a couple of days about what kind of things do you like to do? What things feel good for you? What actions are you doing that feel good? Does it feel good to help others? Then maybe that could be a possible value, and really looking into what does your life look like, I think.
Yeah, I agree. Sorry, Alessia, I thought you were done. I'm so sorry.
No, I am.
No, I completely agree with what Alessia was saying. A lot of the times, if you kind of look at what your actions and kind of your movement, where are you going to? What kind of direction are you leaning towards, can also help you differentiate between what values are of importance to you and which aren't. Of course, like we said, sometimes you're not always going to live completely by your goals or by your values. So it's important to see maybe why you're not. And one of the things could be reevaluating whether or not that is a value for you. And I think that's kind of the best route to it.
Awesome. I also have a question from one of the participants here. How can we better respect a family member or a friend's values that we truly don't believe in and we can't connect with?
Oh, that's a tough one. Yeah, and I think that comes up. That's a really normal thing to have coming up, especially if we think about COVID-19 being at home, if we are at home with that family member. But even if we're not, it's still just as difficult. So I find that what helps for me is really having that person explain to me why that value is important to them and where they're coming from with it. Because even if we can't connect to that value or to the reasons why, I guess having the empathy around why that person might find that to be an important value for them will help you soften a little bit, although it is really difficult.
Yeah, like what Alessia was saying, it's really hard. And I think going back to what we were saying about a lot of the times there's no right or wrong value at the end of this, there really isn't, but it is a lot of personal preference. And sometimes you're not always going to have the same choice or preference like in pizza, or even the way you take your coffee. So it doesn't mean that it's wrong. It just means that it's different. So trying to respect each other, I think, is also very important. And trying to understand that these are personal preferences, and that that's okay, can also sometimes help understand each other a little better.
And even understanding if what they are saying is a value is actually a value, because it might be, so maybe some clarification around, is that actually a value for that person?
One thing that I think might be helpful, if possible, could we go back to that slide with that giant list of values in it?
Sure.
I think one thing that can happen sometimes is what's conflicting is not necessarily the value so much as how the person then enacts the value. And that's where we can see the conflict, because none of these things inherently on their own are generally particularly problematic, but it's when someone takes it to a level that's extreme, or then has a stance about that value that is expressed in a way that interferes with our values or our goals. And that's where we can see the conflict. But absolutely maintaining empathy, helping to connect with, helping to understand, can make a really, really big difference in how we then kind of bridge the gap between what we understand about that person and what we don't. The other thing is we can continue to live by our values regardless of what other people are presenting to us, right? And the nice thing about the acceptance and commitment strategy here is that we are committing to be the kind of people we want to be, regardless of the conditions that we're under, and accepting that we can't always control other people and we can't always control our circumstances. We have some more questions here. So how can we navigate a relationship where our core values do differ? Can the relationship still be successful?
So I don't know.
Right, did you want, I was waiting for you.
I know, it's okay. I guess kind of going back to it, at the end of the day, everyone is very different, and values can also sometimes, they might always align between people if it's a romantic relationship. See where they're coming from, and trying to understand kind of the importance of that value to them can, I think, help the partner also appreciate that person's choice of values as well. So I think the important thing is empathy, is trying to respect that partner, and really appreciate that the values that the person is aligning with have a great importance to them. And I think maybe also seeing that may help the partnership as well.
I think a lot of it too has to do with managing expectations. So if we think about this in terms of two partners, what is our expectation for our partner? And it doesn't always have to fit. Let's say if we have conflicting values, they might not have the same value, but it's the expectation maybe of respect for my values versus yours. I know satire therapy talks a lot about that, and about we have expectations, then expectations about our expectations, then feelings about that. So it can get a little tricky. But yeah, just even like what Mona's saying, echoing, just having some respect around it too, can be difficult when you don't feel like you're on the same value page.
Mm-hmm. Great. So another question here. If we have the kind of personality of setting goals but never attaining them, or having a lot of difficulty attaining them, how do we make that value super important towards us attaining our goals?
I think.
Oh, go ahead. Oh, I was just repeating it back to myself because it was a long question.
I think going back to this slide, and by the way, these resources, this webinar will be available to you. So if you want to go back to it, I think is great. But I really like the way this is broken down in ACT, because it doesn't just say one thing might be the reason why you're not attaining the goal that you're trying to, or you're not aligning with that value. It could be a number of things. And when you first don't achieve that goal, it doesn't mean that you're doing anything wrong, but it might be that you maybe don't have the proper, the necessary skills that you may need in order to accomplish them. So if you don't really have the skills, it's difficult to achieve that goal. But additionally, sometimes you need resources. Sometimes you need to reach out and get help, or need to do the things that you that can help you build up what you need to get that goal. So it is sometimes really difficult when you're not attaining that goal and you keep trying and it's not working. But what I really like about this slide especially is that you can look at it from different areas, and depending on what's causing that deficit in that goal, maybe one of these areas might help you. So I think this is really beneficial and looking at it in that point of view. And you can even do it in a list format. So you would start, okay, maybe a goal is to get 8 hours of sleep. Okay, so is that goal still important to me? Yes. So what are my ways of increasing my chances of attaining that in the future? So maybe setting an alarm to go to bed by 10 p.m. every night. And what are attaining some skills before attempting to achieve that goal? Maybe I need to read a book before instead of watching TV, or even meditate. So kind of seeing different things and different routes that you can do, I think really helps. So I think this is a great kind of help if you are having difficulty in achieving your goals. Hope that helps. Sorry.
For whatever it's worth, if it's okay. I think sometimes what also happens is, even though we think a goal is really important to us, and it is in fact important to us, in the moment in which we might enact that goal, something else takes priority, right? And so, for example, you may, like Mona said, have the goal of sleeping 8 hours. So you set your alarm to remind you to go to bed at 10. And at 10 o'clock, you're watching the best part of your show. Netflix is about to start the next one. And so in that moment, the priority becomes not going to bed at 10 and instead continuing to watch TV. And that's okay, right? Our priorities change, but it's at least helpful to recognize that, so that maybe we can time our TV out a little bit differently, or at least we can give ourselves permission to continue to watch the TV show and not feel guilty or shame about it because we made that decision. But being able to take control and recognize that we are committing to action, no matter what that action is in any given moment, can give ourselves a little bit of a break and help us practice some self-compassion. Okay, I have some more questions here. So when would we normally use this technique? So acceptance and commitment therapy, as well as the conversation about values and goals. When would we use this with clients?
Oh, okay, that's a great question.
Sure. Yeah.
I use values, I would say, with almost all of my clients. I think I personally love the ACT therapy model, as you can tell, based on our presentation. But I think if you look at it in the way of values as something that helps you to live a better life, or to live the life that you want, which is the main purpose of the values-based system in ACT, I think that this could be beneficial for everyone. Even if you find that you have clients who are struggling with reaching goals or setting the same goal over and over that they don't reach, and they're getting like super frustrated and upset about it because they just really want to reach this overall goal, it would be great to help break down further. Okay, maybe there's a couple steps, like Mona's slide, that we need to look at before we get to that goal.
So I'm not seeing any more questions. I am seeing some comments that I did want to share, though, just to do that. So one is that the bullseye exercise and visuals really helpful. So thank you for sharing that with us.
Oh, awesome.
The other is that we ought not to tell others what their values are or what their values should be, right? And so thank you for sharing that, participants. I won't say people's names just out of respect and confidentiality. And the other thing was just recognizing that it's insightful when we allow ourselves to give ourselves permission to do the things we need to do, because guilt can definitely get in the way. And it's really interesting to think about it, because so often it's that guilt and that shame and that frustration with ourselves that really holds us back from achieving our goals and from being the kind of people we want to be. And so being able to let go of that when it's unhelpful to us, which most of the time it is, can be extremely effective.
Definitely.
Okay, so I'm not seeing any more questions here. Thank you so much to everyone for having attended. Thank you, Alessia and Mona, for showering us with this insight and knowledge.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And if the two of you have any final words, I'll let you say them.
Oh, just thank you for everyone for taking time out of your evening to do this at 6 p.m. We hope that this is not only valuable information for now and just where we are currently with the world, but just in the future and through any tough times you have, looking at your values is really awesome.
Great. Thank you so much. I'll talk to you guys soon.
Thanks.